Welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is week 13 of the power rankings for Major League Rugby's 2023 season. Can't believe we are almost finished with the season. It seems just like yesterday we were kicking off the 2023 season for Major League Rugby. Just 5 weeks left. This week, unlike the last couple of weeks, we've had all the teams playing, so there's been a little bit of a mix-up. The top and the bottom kind of staying the same. There is a new team in the top four, which we consider kind of the elite teams, but there's a lot of mixing up in the middle. Teams are starting to make their way towards that playoff push. There's a lot of injuries, a lot of players that are coming back as well. So, man, it's going to be interesting to see what teams, like I say, rugby is a game of attrition. It's going to be interesting to see which teams are standing literally at the very end of the season as we go into the playoff. Right now, the playoff picture is kind of developing, though only three spots in each conference goes on to the playoffs. The top teams of each conference get a bye, and then team number 2 and number 3 face off against each other in the playoffs. So right now, about 4 teams on each side fighting for 3 spots each. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets kind of pushed out, who clinches into the playoffs. So with that being said, we do have a lot to go over, so we might as well kick it off. We had this week our very first draw of the season, and that took place between your bottom place team, the Toronto Arrows, and Rugby ATL, playing a draw in York Lions Stadium, 34-34. You know, to be honest, a very great performance by the Toronto Arrows. In the very first 15 minutes, ATL was up 17-0. It looked like pretty much another one-sided game, which has become kind of the tradition with a Toronto game, unfortunately. But then, and you know, not for a lack of trying, the Arrows tried twice, as I recall, where they were at the goal line. Unfortunately, knock-ons or just a silly penalty really kept Toronto out of the try zone. But then in the second half, they started coming back. There was a beautiful play by Lalani Fayao for the Toronto Arrows. An interception by him. He read the play really well. That set up a Richardson try. And then, in the end, the last literally 10 minutes, a try by Deshaun Bowen, who has become a breakout star for the Toronto Arrows. He has that 7 speed that I like to talk about because he plays for the Sevens Canadian team in the World Rugby Sevens circuit. And then another try, as well as a penalty kick by Shane O'Leary at the last second. He's become clutch as he has emerged as the fly half for the Toronto Arrows. He scores the tying penalty kick in order for the Toronto Arrows, who were down to Rugby ATL, like I said before, 17-0 to tie up the game, 34-34. It ended up being a very, very entertaining game. I'll admit I was a little on the fence about maybe possibly moving Toronto up because of such an amazing performance, but at the same time, they didn't necessarily win, they didn't lose, so kind of almost like a bye. And with me and these power rankings on a bye, I don't like to move a team up or down. Draw, I'm going to keep the Toronto Arrows where they are, but a very promising game for them in that game with the ATL. Second team on the bottom, the 11th place team, the Dallas Jackals, still looking for their second win of the season, second win in franchise history. They unfortunately lose to the Utah Warriors 26-36. You know, honestly, the game started pretty lopsided, just like the Toronto game, where within 20 minutes, Utah was up 26-0. With that being said, Dallas did start coming back. There was a brace by JP Zeiss for the Dallas Jackals, but unfortunately, all the coming back from the Dallas Jackals in the second half of the game just wasn't enough. The lead by Utah was so big already. Utah ended up winning 36-26. Again, a pretty promising game by the Dallas Jackals. Maybe, I don't know if Utah might have put their foot off the gas a little bit, or Dallas with that Argentinian really hard physical style kind of wore down Utah. Either way, Dallas did look pretty good. Utah still kept them out of the try zone, and so Utah with the win. Dallas sits at number 11. Oh, another heartbreak game, and our number 10 spot goes to the Chicago Hounds, who are also still looking for their second win of their franchise. Man, for a game like the Toronto Arrows, where their fly half, Shane O'Leary was able to tie the game. Not so much with the Chicago Hounds, unfortunately. Chicago was actually up in the game 10-7 against the New York Ironworkers, your reigning and defending MLR champions. It was a very physical game. Chicago was playing really, really well, but as is the case with Chicago, the numbers don't lie. After the first 60 minutes, things start to unravel for Chicago. New York started coming back. There was a try by Andrew Coe, a beautiful one by Ben Bonasso. In the very last second, though, because of a penalty, Chicago sent in Luke Carty, who has been pretty clutch, formerly of the LA Guiltinis, brother to Jack Carty, who plays in Europe. He's also been capped as a National Eagles. Luke Carty has been really, really good this season. Had the opportunity to go for the tie at least. Go for the win. And unfortunately, the ball just clipped the uprights and was not able to go in. Oh, man, you could hear the crowd. The crowd thought that ball was going in, and it did not. I feel so bad for Luke Carty because you could see the devastation on him. That game was possibly Chicago's second win in their franchise history. Unfortunately, they came up 1 point short, losing to the New York Ironworkers 2021. New York luckily able to get out of Chicago with the win. Again, I really wanted to kind of move Chicago up because of such a great performance, but unfortunately, a loss is a loss. Right above them, NOLA Gold, rounding out your bottom four, losing to the top team in my power rankings. Spoiler alert there. The San Diego Legion, 26-12. It was a very disjointing game. Tough game for first-time starter, fly half for NOLA Gold, Reese Brody, who was really struggling at the office that day. He was 1 for 4 off of the tee. 8 points that he possibly could have had that he missed. Not that really made much of a difference when you look at the scoreline, 12-26. But who knows? Possibly could have changed some momentum for NOLA. They always seem like they were playing catch up. There was a moment in the last 10 minutes. There was a yellow card on San Diego. Possibly to that NOLA could have came in within at least a try. But unfortunately, a knock on at the goal line. And then a bad pass that Ross Isaac of San Diego was able to intercept to go for the go-ahead try, and in the end, NOLA ends up losing to San Diego, as I mentioned before, 12-26. Sliding down a spot, even though I really don't like to move a team because of a draw, like with Toronto, Rugby ATL slides down a spot from number 7 to number 8, simply because of some of the movement above them. As I mentioned before, Utah defeating the Dallas Jackals 36-26 felt warranted enough for them to move up. So I moved them up a spot to number 7 from number 8, and I moved Atlanta down a spot from number 8 to number 7. New York defeating Chicago by just 1 point. Really I didn't feel it was justifiable enough to move them up or down, so I stayed them at number 6. And then going down a spot, Old Glory DC moving from the number 4 spot to the number 5 after being trounced by the New England Free Jacks 24-42. Again, this game was pretty much all New England. Big news flash though, coming back from Japan, because the Japan Rugby regular season is over. They're going through their playoffs. They're going to have their championship game this weekend, I believe. Bodie Waka, who was the top player for Major League Rugby, top scoring player for Major League Rugby last year, returns to the New England Free Jacks. Unfortunately, for us Major League Rugby fans, we didn't get to see Bodie Waka get onto the field simply because New England was so far ahead of Old Glory. There was no reason to bring in Bodie Waka. Plus, two, that addition of Bodie Waka to New England is amazing. Gives him so much depth because right now his replacement at fly half, Jason Protros, has been amazing. I mean, that guy easily for Rookie of the Year, and we usually give it to a person who's first year with Major League Rugby, not necessarily their very first season of rugby. He definitely is in the running for Rookie of the Year for Major League Rugby because he's been so good. Old Glory did have a couple of moments where they could have come back, but unfortunately, New England pretty much put them away. As I mentioned before, pretty dominant performance. That performance moves them up a couple of spots, but before we get to them, moving down a spot from the number 3 spot to the number 4 spot, the Houston SaberCats, unfortunately, in a pretty competitive game, just came up short to Seattle, 17-34. Again, the scoreline doesn't really show how competitive that game was at first. It was the game my MLR watch along this weekend, which again, I want to give a shout out to all the great people that came in to watch that game. Connor Cahill especially, we had a lot of fun talking about all sorts of different things, not just rugby, but also too, how is it that the Seattle Seawolves logo doesn't get talked about because it looks a lot like the Canucks logo. Also too, what exactly is a Seawolf? All that stuff. It was a lot of fun. Highly recommend for the next watch along game, join us because it is a lot of fun and we get to watch rugby. But Houston was very close. They were actually up on Seattle 17-3, which it looked like it was going to be a rout, but unfortunately for Houston, Seattle just came back like a house of fire. Even the Foodie had a hat trick. That guy was my player of the game. He was amazing in his performance, and it basically became almost a one-sided affair in the second half. Seattle proving their dominance and why they are still my favorite to go into the championship game at the very end, possibly raising the shield to become the very first three-time MLR Shield champions. Going in number 3, we have, for the first time, I believe this season, if not for the outside of the very first week of the season, we have an Eastern Conference team breaking into the top 4, and that is the New England Free Jacks, who I know I have a lot of New England fans that are going to be so happy about this because I've been pretty harsh on New England from the very start of the season. I didn't think they'd do very well without Bodie Waka, but as I mentioned before, with Jason Protros, with the rest of the team stepping up, New England has become the dominant team in the Eastern Conference. Everybody else is pretty much chasing them, and their performance against Old Glory warrant them moving up to the number 3 spot from the number 5 spot. Then you're rounding out your top 2. As I mentioned before, the top 2 teams in the Western Conference. This Seattle Seawolves looks a lot like the Vancouver Canucks logo. And then, of course, you have your dominant team showing their performance. San Diego Legion defeating NOLA Gold 26-12. And they sit at number 1. So, like I mentioned before, your top teams, your bottom teams, pretty much the same. A lot of movement in the middle, especially with New England coming into the top 4 representing the Eastern Conference. But when you look at the actual standings, Old Glory, New York, Rugby, ATL, and NOLA are all still within striking range of at least a playoff spot. In the Western Conference, it still is between these 4 teams. Utah is still just hanging on there, though honestly, it does look like Houston, Seattle, and the Legion are starting to push away. But we still have 5 more weeks of rugby left, so a lot of things can happen. Who knows? Maybe NOLA makes a run. Maybe Chicago finally puts it together. We'll see. Now, moving on. let's go over our Pick'em Super Brew MLR Rugby 411 Pick'em results. And I gotta admit, man, guys, I tried my best. I made a lot of gutsy decisions, took chances on a lot of, possible upsets, but it ended up backfiring on me because I did not do well at all. But I know one individual who did, and he can't wait for this moment. Congratulations once again to USA League and Union fan. Don't call it a comeback. He is back with the golden cap. 7.33. Just barely sliding past MSDRFC 83. Mikey with number 7. And then in third place, the reviewer 812, 6.83. And Brit 47 with 6.5. And Villa Farrell round out the top 5 with a score of 6. Unfortunately, Tex back at the bottom with the wooden spoon again, 1.5. But hey, brother, I'm right behind you, so don't feel so bad. And honestly, God bless you because you're still trying. You're still putting in your picks. Most people would be giving up. I commend you, and I still recommend that you don't give up because you could still make your way up, at least possibly past me in the overall rankings. And speaking of overall rankings, bam! Right now, MSDRFC 83, 87.83 points at the top, making his way further up. His gap between him and second place SD Cal Guy has increased to about 6 points now. SD Cal Guy sits at 81.08. John Hawkins at number 3 with 79.83. Jahaigo, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, 77.49. And then Harry at 76.66. But once again, watch out, guys. Moving up 3 spots to the number 6 spot, USA League and Union fan at 73.66 because of that great performance this week. He is not out of the running, and no one really is out of the running. We still got to have 5 weeks, guys. We still have 5 weeks left of rugby. Lots of things could happen. Like I said, Tex can make a run up for it. I can make a run up for it. We have a lot of players still trying to get that top spot. All J Long is still in the hunt. So who knows who's going to come out on top and win themselves an MLR t-shirt of the team of their choice from yours truly at the end of the season. So again, guys, don't forget, in my next video, I'm going to talk about our pick'ems. There is a game on Thursday night. This is probably going to drop late tonight, Wednesday night. You'll probably see it tomorrow on Thursday. Don't forget, that night is a game, so get your picks in. Don't lose out. Don't miss out on possible points. And again, it's a tight race, so good luck, everybody. And thank you very much for everyone who's participating in my Super Brew poll. It's been a lot of fun. Still 5 weeks left. Anybody's game. And as always, thank you very much, guys, for watching my video. Let me know what you think about my rankings. I know a lot of you guys have got your own rankings, your little tiers that you put up. I love it. Let me know how it goes. And as always, thank you very much for watching my videos, and I'll see you on the pitch.